studio location. I'm walking down the hall, and I hear the music start. I hear the Rush Limbaugh, recognized globally. I heard the music. Oh, this Rush must be starting. And then it just hit me. Wait a minute, I got to be on. Isn't that weird? Because I've listened, like many of you, I listened to Rush for 30 years. So I heard the music, and then anyway, the good news, it's Friday. And you know what that means.
Live from New York, it's Open Line Friday!
And the exciting thing about that is we can legally say live from New York because Allie, our call screener, she's in a secret location in New York. Yeah, and so is Mike. We're scattered all over because the governor said we have to be 600 miles apart and wear a mask. It's bittersweet, is it not, heading into Memorial Day weekend with the pandemic? But before I get too far into this segment, I want to share this with you for people that tuned in today and said, oh, I thought Rush was going to be back. Honey, you said Rush was going to be back. It's Ken. What's going on? Well, Rush actually explained it yesterday, and he did a better job than me, so here he is.
A programming note, ladies and gentlemen, I have decided to take tomorrow off. I'm gassed. Just no other way to say it. So I'm going to take tomorrow off. We have Monday, Memorial Day off. We'll be back here on Tuesday. And we have a guest host? Ken Matthews will be guest hosting tomorrow. We have a standby at all times here in case it's necessary. So I'm just adding a day to the Memorial Day weekend that doesn't involve blood draws and scans and cancer consultations and so forth. So we'll do that, and then the Monday holiday back here on Tuesday.
And there it is. Not only the number one anchor man in America, the most honest and transparent and candid as well. So thank you, Mr. Limbaugh, for the opportunity, and thank you for tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. 800-282-2882. Now, it is bittersweet. And what I mean by that, we're heading into a Memorial Day weekend for people who know what that is. We're recognizing the people that have lost their lives in defense of our country and our liberties, the men and women that have sacrificed. That's the ultimate sacrifice. So here we are. We're heading in to this time, which is, again, it's always kind of mixed. For some people, depending on your relationship to the military, your own involvement, your family's involvement, your study of history, whatever it may be. For some people, it's, you fly the flag and you have a barbecue, and there's nothing wrong with that. And for others, it's a very somber time. But I think one thing we can agree on this year, and this is what, to me, it makes my heart sink, that we're heading into a Memorial Day weekend where there are states that will not let Boy Scout troops put flags on graves. They won't let groups do that. And in the past, my kids did it. They were both in Scouts. And I remember that was, of all the things we did, for me as a Scout dad, I was never a leader, but for all the things we did, that to me was the most exciting because I could tell them about their grandfathers and their uncles and men and women in our family over the years that were in different areas of the world in the military. And it was just a cool time. You got all these kids, these young kids in uniforms and with their American flags, and we're going. Usually you do it after church on the Sunday before Memorial Day. Sometimes you do it Memorial Day before you have like the Scout picnic. But a lot of our leftist leaders said no. And I'm like, wait a minute. First you said we can't go to church if it's over 10 people. So first you said that. So look at what we've given up just recently. And I can't help but wonder if some of those men and women were alive, what would they be thinking today when they said, well, why don't we go to church as a family, and then we'll head over to the memorial and put some flags on some graves, and then we'll go to that picnic at the beach. That'll be a no, and a no. Well, wait a minute. Why? A complete violation of the First Amendment. So we're going to be talking about that, and it is Open Line Friday, and you know what that means, 800-282-2882. But I was just going through my little pile of preparation here next to the big snurdly stack of stuff, and everybody, it looks like the blue state governors have been the worst with abusing religion. It doesn't surprise me, but you've got so many different examples. You have people being fined in Minnesota. Minnesota governor allows 50 people in restaurants but limits churches to 10. And then several pastors have been fined. DOJ warns California Governor Newsom, you're discriminating against churches. I don't know if you saw the church in Mississippi I believe it was Mississippi. It might be Alabama. I just caught the tail. Here's what happened. I caught the tail end of the report before the show started. And all I heard was an accent. And I'm presuming it was in one of those states. But you may remember the church that said, hey, we're gonna congregate and worship our God because that's what the Constitution says. Well, it burnt down. Now, the thing that I found most upsetting, I immediately looked it up online. And the comments were despicable. There is a sense of, I don't know what it is. Is it anger? Is it resentment? I can't help but wonder with these hardcore leftists, what is it? What happened? What happened to you that you're so angry that you would post after someone's church burned down? Well, it serves you right. You should have listened to the governor. What are you, in East Germany? It's scary. By the way, there's a CDC COVID update, and this is legit. I know we have fun on the show, but I just want to give you the solid updates. There's a new map out that is plotting the second wave. Now, in my opinion, and I'm not a doctor, I never played one on TV, but I did wear a lab coat once, so I could have probably planned Obamacare if I was in the right photo op. The most recent CDC COVID update is this. The virus does not spread easily from contaminated surfaces or animals. This is a revision. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that revision. We really appreciate that. Now that we've purchased 800 gallons of hand sanitizer and Clorox wipes. Now let's move to the next CDC update. There is a hidden risk keeping hand sanitizer in your car during hot summer months because flammable liquids in direct sunlight can explode. I just don't understand how this works. Do you? Wipe this off, don't wipe it off. Wear the mask, don't wear the mask. 6 feet apart, well, sorta. And now, oh, there's a sanitizer bomb in your car. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show. My name's Ken Matthews. And it's
Experience peak EIB with a membership to Rush 24/7. Access El Rushmo in real time or on demand. Scour thousands of pages of audio and text archives. Rush 24/7 could be the largest repository of conservative wisdom in the universe. Join now at rushlimbaugh.com. Rush 24/7 also makes a great gift for Dad. You're listening to the EIB Network.
Sounded like I was talking and then what? And that's exactly what happened. I was just talking to Mike about it, the audio guy, and he said, well, I thought you signaled me telepathically. Because sometimes people wonder how you can be in another state, or I often wonder how the Democrat Party can be in a state of delusion. But sometimes you wonder how you can be in another state and communicate, and there's kind of a rhythm to it, and it's kind of fun and funny at the same time. 800-282-2882, Open Line Friday. Doctors raising alarms about the effect of a continued coronavirus shutdown. I don't know how I butchered that sentence so horribly, probably because I'm used to calling it COVID. And when I see coronavirus, I just freak. So more than 600 doctors signed on to a letter. They sent it to President Trump. And they were pushing him to end the national shutdown. And they said, we are heading into, and I'm quoting the letter from the doctors, and it's on foxnews.com, by the way. we're heading into a mass casualty incident with exponentially growing health consequences because, according to the doctors, we flatten the curve. Those of us the millions and millions and millions of conscientious Americans that followed these edicts, and we flatten the curve, and now we've passed the point. So now we're at diminishing return. Now I think we've passed diminishing returns. I think we're at damaging returns now. And the letters outline a variety of consequences that doctors have observed. Now, obviously, you've got so many people missing routine checkups that can detect things like what's happening now: heart problems, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, financial instability, anxiety, depression. All these things are worse. Every one of these is worse than having COVID, with the exception of death, obviously. But when you look at the numbers of COVID, the description of COVID, the percentages, and the fact that it has a 98.8 survival rate. So that's an interesting letter, and I found it interesting that I only saw this on Fox News, that no one else would cover it. I guess they think all those doctors are medical deniers or something. 800-282-2882. Oh, the phone lines are stacking up now for Open Line Friday. Now, before we get to the phones, I have to share this story with you because people are experiencing this around the country. They've emailed us. Rush gets just tons of email, and so many people have emailed the show and our separate shows around the country, those of us that do talk radio and that are live and really following this story. This is a story of Bernardsville, New Jersey, a gift shop owner. She was charged with operating her business illegally the day before yesterday. She was charged in New Jersey. Now, the reason I want to point this out to you is how it went down. Now, I know you're familiar with these hair salon and spa owners and all these different people that are just trying to get back to work. And they're following the protocol. And what's so heartbreaking about this, her name is Catherine. That's her first name. Now, the video is long, so I don't have time to play it on the show today. We have too many moving parts today. But I put it on my Facebook page at Ken Matthews. When you see the video, go 1 hour and 55 minutes into it. Go 1:55. Just pull it over. Just pull the mouse, and that's when the police show up at the store, and it's all recorded. And what is sad about it is, here is a woman who had her store closed. She was in her store with one other employee. They were distancing, and they were selling things online, like many, many people have done with Facebook Live. They've gone online. They said, look, our store's closed, but you can go online, or you can come by curbside pickup. We'll show you some of the products that we have. We've all seen this. Now, I want you to listen to the story here from New Jersey and tell me what it reminds you of. The police department has been monitoring all essential and non-essential business operations in the borough for compliance with emergency executive orders, said Chief Kevin Valentine. The members of the police department are sympathetic to the difficulties facing our community. Our officers try to solicit compliance with the executive orders that are in place to protect the health and safety of all citizens. When a complaint is made, we investigate it and take action. Pay close attention to this, because this drives me crazy, because I know the crime rates in New Jersey, because I live right next door in Pennsylvania. So when a complaint is made, when that neighbor, when that fellow business owner, or what do they used to call them, rats or snitches, when that fellow business owner snitches, we are going to take action.
Yeah, I think someone's not wearing a mask. I see him moving around in there, trying to make a living to feed their family. All units respond.
The Bernardsville Police Department received a complaint at 1:57 p.m. last Saturday about ongoing business operations at the Country Home Store. At 3:07, they received another complaint. That's 2 complaints. What's your emergency? Yeah, there are some hardworking Americans working hard. All right, we're on our way. This is where we are heading into Memorial Day weekend. After the second complaint, the chief responded on this one. Now, I do not know, because you hear the chief, you see the officer. I couldn't tell if the chief was in full tactical gear, with the tactical ballistic vest with the heavy plates, tactical helmet, I don't know, night vision. They went to the store and found it was operating in violation of the executive order. The officers told the owner about the restrictions and that curbside delivery of retail goods would be coming soon. They asked her to stop her current operations in compliance with the executive order, blah, blah, blah. She said she would comply, but she did not agree with the need for those restrictions. However, this is what bothers me. On Tuesday afternoon, she did not open her store. She just went online. Yet Somerset County prosecutors reviewed the case, and then she was charged on Wednesday because after 8 o'clock, you see, the governor of New Jersey, who's also the supreme leader, just like in Pennsylvania, Governor Wolf is the supreme leader. The governor of New Jersey said no one should operate after 8 o'clock. And I guess she was showing online products from her craft store in a closed store by herself with one other employee that was distanced. And somebody called in and said, they're in there and they're not wearing masks. And I thought, you know what this reminds me of? And I know we have people in this audience that know these organizations. Syria, 1964. Remember the police group that helped change the government over? Yeah, doesn't that remind you of that? Or in East Germany, the Stasi. Remember them? The Stasi or Stasi? The secret police group. You could go to the Stasi and you could sell out your neighbor and you'd get extra stuff. Like if you ratted out your neighbor.
Yeah, I just saw Bob. He was doing some extra work so he could get his kids tennis shoes. Where's my extra cheese, Mr. Government Man?
And the Soviet Union. So that's an actual story. You'll see the video. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I wish it wasn't, it would be funny if it was a Saturday Night Live skit. Think about it. Think about how funny it would be if that was an SNL skit. Someone called in. They reported a woman working in a closed store, videotaping things she's selling. And then the police come in and say they're going to shut her down. That would be kind of funny, but that's how it works in most blue states. And if you live in a blue state, you know. It's Open Line Friday. We're about to hit a hard break, but we are going right to the phones when I get back. 800-282-2882. Ken Matthews in for America's Anchorman, and I do want to remind you that Rush will be back Tuesday. But we have a lot to talk about today, and I want to know also what are your Memorial Day plans? I mean, did you get a permission note from your governor to memorialize people? It's a crazy time in America. It really is. By the way, the judge in Oregon ruled that their restrictions are invalid. The Stasi. It is the Ministry for State Security or State Security Service, commonly known as the Stasi, was the official state security service of the German Democrat Republic. Well, they called it democratic, but there's not really a lot that's democratic about today's Democrats. But anyway, it has been described as one of the most effective and repressive intelligence and secret police agencies ever to have existed. Now, this was the group, and I think this is where people like Obama and hardcore leftists get this. This was the group that said, if you really care about your country and your family, you'll rat on people that are doing what we say not to do. And have we not already heard that from some of the highest profile leftist governors, whether it's Whitmer in Michigan or Newsom in California? You see someone not wearing a mask, let us know. Call the police. And I think the craziest stuff, if you just go on the Internet, you will find video, audio. It really is, it's widespread now. The fact that people accept this behavior They accept police chiefs saying, look, if you see someone that's not socially distancing, you call 911 and we'll respond. I'm like, where were you during the gang wars? That's crazy. I love it when a cop says, if someone's trying to work, we'll take action. That's the best line in that whole article in New Jersey. If someone's trying to work, we're going to take action. If illegals flood the border and opioids are everywhere and gangs are jumping in high school kids by initiation in states deep into our heartland by killing them, well, but you better have a mask on because we're going to take action. Now, I know everybody that went to the academy for law enforcement didn't expect this ridiculousness, but you'll be amazed at how many cops on these tapes say, ma'am, sir, I'm just doing what I'm told. I'm just following orders. Boy, does that sound familiar. 800-282-2882. Back to the churches very quickly. Michigan, only 10 allowed. New York, governor permits 10 people at religious gatherings. Minnesota, governor allows 10 people in the church. California, I think they've actually closed some churches there. Yeah, the Department of Justice is warning California Governor Gavin Newsom that his plan to gradually reopen the state discriminates against churches. Well, look, every leftist knows you can discriminate against whoever you want except leftist. Think about that for a minute as we head into Memorial Day weekend. The violations of our Constitution that are being accepted and what scares me, enforced by law enforcement. Now, I don't know how the whole law enforcement dynamic works as far as orders and chain of command, but in the military, and I know there are a lot of veterans that listen, maybe you can weigh in on this since it's Open Line Friday later in the show. Don't you have the right to disobey an illegal or unconstitutional order? Somewhere I read that. I could be wrong. I never served in that capacity. But let me know, because wouldn't the police have the same? Maybe not. I don't know. I guess it just depends what township you're in or how leftist your governor is. But this church thing is really sad. I think this is one of the saddest things. That and the school, shutting down the schools. 800-282-2882, The Rush Limbaugh Show. Dave in St. Louis. Dave, you're on the EIB network.
Hello.
Hi, Dave.
Hi. Ken, you were talking about the churches. The reason the churches are being attacked by the left is because it's a campaign move, because people who go to church tend to be Trump supporters. They don't care about their lives. They are carrying out a campaign operation. Businesses, independent business people tend to be Trump supporters. That's why they're attacking them and shutting them down, because they tend to be Trump supporters. It's simply for the campaign. They don't care who lives and who dies. This is for the campaign. The only way to get Trump is through the economy. Church people, economy. That's what they're doing. It's horrible, but that's what they're doing.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you for calling, David. You bring up a great point. The pattern is there. I mean, I know if you're a Democrat driving down the road and you're shaking your head, well, I care about the people. Well, chances are you do. But I got to tell you, the strategy of the Democrat Party leadership, it's not looking like that. It's just not looking like that. The fact that worship and God is a target and other places are not. And then this new wave has just come out. This new wave of, they're saying there's going to be another wave of COVID. I don't know if you've seen the map. I'll see if I can find it so I can describe it. But I call them panic maps, and they put the panic maps out usually mid to late week. I'm sure the strategists decide, okay, regarding people and level of control, where do you think we are? We're 5 months out from the election. The media probably has a meeting. Everybody has a meeting. What would keep people on edge this weekend? Because, there's 4 or 5 states in the northeast corridor of the country. Their beaches are open. But our dingbat Governor Tom Wolf in Pennsylvania said, don't go to those beaches. It's just, you can't win for losing. The beach, I have a friend that's a doctor, well, more than one, but one that I talked to COVID a lot about. He said the beach is probably the best place you can be. The wind, the ocean, the salt, the sand, the distancing. But what does he know? He's a doctor. It's not like he's Joy Behar. Back to the phones we go. John in Bethlehem. John, I understand you are a nurse. Welcome to the Rush Limbaugh Show.
I'm on the front lines. How are you, Ken?
Good. On the front lines and right around the corner from my other studio. Welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been a rough ride, but taking the precautions has helped a lot of people. I myself ended up getting it in the early part of April. It was 10 days, and I was back at work. My wife ended up getting it for me. Don't say I don't share. Unfortunately, she had a rough time with it. But I understand there's some new guidelines from the CDC, not worrying about wiping things up, and I can agree with that. We don't have to, and the masks outside are ridiculous.
That's something I never understood, and maybe you can shed some medical expertise on. I don't understand the mask outside concept at all.
Well, going by what I heard a researcher from Cornell University say, you would need to be in an enclosed room with someone who is actively infected and febrile, have a fever, for at least 15 minutes to a half an hour to become even close to possibly being infected. The transmission rate that way is extremely low. The way of transmission, the way I got it, it was touching something that I ended up introducing into a mucous membrane. It only takes one tiny short mistake, and it happened, and that's really where the number one danger is. And for people wearing masks everywhere and gloves for hours at a time at a drive-through is just ridiculous, because if you've touched something that was contaminated, you're now going to be spreading it all over the cash register and everything else you touch. You're better off throwing it off and washing your hands every 15 to 20 minutes.
Well, isn't that the standard form of transmission for most things? You have it on part of your body, and it touches, eye, nose, mouth, and that's how it, whatever it may be.
That's exactly right. It's a mucous membrane transmission, and as the viruses don't generally live long, some people say it's 3 hours. I'm not sure. The chances of picking up a bottle of soap at the store and then infecting yourself is relatively low, if infinitesimally low.
Of course, now we're finding out you pick up a thing of hand sanitizer at the store, it could blow up in your car at the right temperature. So what? That's it. They just put that out. That's true.
Yeah.
Hand sanitizer can explode during the summer months. So I'm thinking this is standard. Most Democrat policies explode during the summer months.
Well, and also, too, there's some information coming out from Dr. Fauci that certainly isn't 100% accurate. For example, meeting people on Tinder is safer. I tried that. I did that clandestinely, and she shut me down when I started talking about the new dry dock at Pearl Harbor. I did that for Ken. Sorry, folks, if you didn't catch up to speed with that. And that was, in fact, a joke. I am happily married. But I think people need to relax now, and they need to step back and not worry so much about being outside with masks on is ridiculous. And even in transient open spaces inside vestibules and inside a quick store, I don't really think it's going to be that much of an issue. But I'm not the expert.
Exactly, but I do appreciate. Thank you for calling, John, and John is a nurse in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and but I hear this and I get this, just like you may hear it as well. You listening, you may hear it from neighbors and what have you. I've probably gotten more anonymous emails over the last several months, like please don't mention my name, or I work at this hospital, but please don't. I've gotten so much data that is exactly what John just said. I've gotten data from doctors. I've had people email me. I'm an ER nurse. I've been doing this for 31 years, and I'm reluctant, because the last thing I ever want to do as a broadcaster is endanger someone. So we're always reluctant to say this doctor said this and that, because you don't want to confuse people. But the bottom line is, I don't know who's confused people more than the CDC, the National Institute of Health, or the World Health Organization. I mean, mask on, mask off. The masker. I'm Ken Matthews, in for Rush Limbaugh.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
The historic Memorial Day weekend for so many reasons. First of all, the weeks, don't they seem longer using the COVID calendar? It's like an ancient calendar from long ago, isn't it? It's like, well, is it 78 hours for one day or 92 hours for? It just feels like every week is a month, every month is a year. So we have this 3-day weekend where every day our rights will be violated by our government, which should be responding to us. So you better not go to that restaurant that you like on Saturday, and you better not go to that church you like on Sunday. And the last thing you want to do is be taking some Boy Scouts out to a military cemetery on Monday. So just make sure you get a note from your Democrat governor so you can continue to live in the land of the free, in the home of the brave. Quick updates before we go back to the phone, because it is Open Line Friday. The guy who recorded the killing of Ahmaud Arbery in Georgia, you know, the two guys were in the truck and they got out of the truck. He was black, in his early 20s, and you've seen it and heard it, right? Well, he's been arrested and charged with murder. Yes, the guy that recorded it. He's charged with felony murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. That's the latest development in that case. By the way, Tara Reid, who no one on the left will believe because she's accusing a Democrat, that's usually the pattern. I mean, all women should be believed unless they're going after a Democrat. Anyway, the law firm is no longer representing her. Now, I find this troubling. First of all, that's probably going to hurt her, even though they put out a statement. I don't need to read it, but the gist of it is us no longer representing Tara Reid is no indication of her, credibility or et cetera. They basically said, we're not doing it because we don't, believe her. We're just. So what do you think happened there? I mean, my gut tells me because law firms are filled with lawyers and lawyers lean left, and there's too many lawyers in government, something tells me that some lawyers called some lawyers about the lawyers and said, if you don't want a lawyer on your lawyer butt, you'll get rid of this case quickly. But I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer. 800-282-2882. Back to the phones we go. Carrie in Houston, Texas, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Are you there, Carrie?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Hello.
Yep.
We're good?
Yes, I hear you now.
Okay, great, buddy. Hey, Houston, Texas, we're a specialty manufacturer of chemicals for the petrochemical industry, and we are rolling out our new anti-COVID disinfectant heavy-duty degreaser just in time to hear the CDC come out with their new guidelines that says, oh, by the way, you don't have to worry about that service anymore. You can't pick up any germs or bacteria. I call it bull, and I say they've been wrong on everything up till now. What makes them think they're going to be right on this one? They're probably run by the same deep staters that run our Justice Department.
Well, let me tell you, it's interesting because you're in Houston, and I got this story from CBS in Dallas where they were talking to a Dallas firefighter, and the firefighter said it's flammable and it's an irritant. That sounds like Joe Biden, doesn't it? It's an irritant. And when it's venting, and if it's venting in a small space like a car, the vapor is released and it can cause an explosion. So the Texas Department of Public Safety shared a photo of an exploded door caused from hand sanitizer. So that's where. So I'm wondering, do you think that there might be a product out there with a different mix or recipe than yours that would be risky?
Well, honestly, our products are all environmentally safe. They're safe for the environment. They're safe for the user. This particular product is completely safe. There's no warning labels on it whatsoever. You can wash your hands in it, then you can dilute it even less and go degrease your shop floor with it. The whole time you're killing bacteria within 60 seconds. We just got the lab results last week, and we're so excited about this product. I'm telling you, we have the largest petrochemical companies, I'm not mentioning names, on board with this. And then you're going to trust the CDC to say, nah, you don't have to clean those surfaces after all.
Well, I think the real test of it is, and I'm so glad you called it, can it be used as a dessert topping? Because in this day and age, we need the flexibility. 800-282-2882, and do not use any type of hand cleaner as a dessert topping. I just realized that if you didn't understand that, like if you're in the news media, do not put it in your mouth. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Up a little bit, and despite what all the experts said, the president using or taking hydroxychloroquine for 2 weeks actually helped him because it gave him credibility that he's a guy who, if he believes in something, he's not afraid to use it. And that kind of blew up the whole narrative of, why isn't he wearing a mask? He's so reckless. Well, first of all, as far as hydroxychloroquine, he's using an FDA-approved drug. He might be using it off-label. The term, I'm told by not only a pharmacist but a doctor, just means he's using something that can be prescribed, that is prescribed for things like malaria or lupus and 3 other things, I believe. And he's using it because he saw data, legitimate data, and what's the other word? Anecdotal. He took them both, and he said, you know what? I'm gonna give this a try. And he did it. And it actually, as much as it freaked out the news media, it sent a signal to everybody. And think about this. Whether you agree with the president or not, it's almost like he's saying, look, I don't expect you to try something that I wouldn't be willing to try as an American. I thought it gave him more credibility. Now, full disclosure, I voted for President Trump. I'm going to vote for him again, and I think Joe Biden's an idiot. So that's the full disclosure. But I also think most of our government tells us to do things and makes suggestions that they never have done or never will do, whether it's a senator or a congressman or whatever. And that's a real issue. And when you look around and you see all these major institutions losing credibility in our country, you're hungry for people that are credible. That's why I always get a kick when you see someone like Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi, and they have a hard hat on, and they're out with a shovel on some new project. But this happens with everybody, right? And you see that and you go, man, you'd last about an hour on a shovel. Then your hands would be shot, your back would be shot, you'd get workman's comp. But so it's refreshing to see someone like President Trump do that. I remember I had Eric Trump on my show years ago. It was the election year, right before the election. And he was telling me, Eric Trump is very, very pro-gun. As you know, President Trump is pro-gun. The family is, he's a sports shooter. He's also, he's a marksman, too. He can shoot, especially with the long rifle. And we were talking guns, which pleasantly surprised me because you don't know if, where people stand on things. But he also brought up the fact that in their teens, all these, the Trump family learned all this construction stuff in their teens, like how to drive a backhoe and a Caterpillar this and the bulldozer that, and they learned all this stuff. So when I hear something like that, I say to myself, oh, one more thing I can relate to. Someone that's been on a construction site. It's kind of like the way veterans can relate to veterans, which I am not. But, veterans relate to veterans, and people that have seen combat relate to people that have seen combat in a different way. Now, I'm not comparing this to a veteran at all, but I'm just saying that A president that talks about what have you got to lose with hydroxychloroquine and then tries it himself, and he looks healthy as a horse to me at the moment. I think he gained points. The media is angry because he went around them. The media is always angry at President Trump because he goes around them. And back to Philadelphia very quickly, which is right down the road from where I'm in my bunker right now. Philadelphia election judge and Democrat Party official pleaded guilty yesterday morning to stuffing ballot boxes in favor of Democrat candidates in the following elections, 2014, 2015, and 2016. Now, here's how they did it. This is what I want to share with you, and this is why we have to be so vigilant as we go into this next election and not buy all this garbage that voter ID is racist and we have to have all mail-in ballots. While collecting thousands of dollars in cash, they made the changes. So the elections judge and the Democrat Party official, they collaborated with an unnamed Democrat consultant / lobbyist. Prosecutors said an even broader conspiracy extends beyond the two that were charged. So the lobbyist comes in, he gives you a cash to change the ballot. Now, they did it on 3 different levels, or 4 different levels in 3 different years. They did local, municipal, federal, and state in 2014, 2015, and 2016. That's just in Pennsylvania. By the way, note to self, we still turn the state red in 2016. The U.S. Attorney's Office in Philadelphia won Thursday's guilty plea from Judge DeMuro, who served as a judge of elections responsible for overseeing a polling place during voting. DeMuro was also a Democrat Party ward chairman. Here's how he did it. You give him $5,000, and he makes the votes go where you need them to go. He rings up the votes for the political consultant's clients. I'm just pointing that out to you because, if you talk to anybody from Barack Obama to Joe Biden, this never happens, and if it does, it's probably for Trump. Wrong. Statistically, it falls on the Democrat Party. Do both parties do it? Yes. Statistically, Democrats are masters at it because they run the unions, the big unions, and they run the big wards around the big cities in blue states. So it's just something to think about. This happened yesterday. You can Google it. But I find it amazing that here's $5,000. I need you to just make sure that this councilman gets elected, this state senator gets elected, or this whatever. That's scary. That's scary. And the fact that the Democrats never, ever, ever say, oh, this is terrible. Oh, we know it happens. They either say it doesn't happen or it doesn't affect the race. Well, if it doesn't affect the race, then why are you so concerned about having people show up at the ballot box? They keep closing polling places. Have you been reading this? In blue states, they're starting to slowly, and they're using COVID as an example, to eliminate voting locations. On top of that, there's several states that want to make it mandatory that the vote is mail-in. And on top of that, and this is in Nancy Pelosi's latest aid scam, the COVID money scam, she wants to make voter ID illegal. So we don't want to identify people. They don't have to show up and vote. Wow, where are we headed with this? Speaking of Joe Biden, here's a quick update. Got to share this with you. It's funny. You can always find the Democrat candidates or candidate on late night TV with a goofball or on some popular morning show in a major city. It's hard to find them near any serious news. Have you noticed that? Listen to what Joe Biden says about you voting for Trump if you are a black American.
Listen, you got to come see us when you come to New York, VP Biden.
I will.
It's a long way until November. We got more questions.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump.
See, if you have a problem figuring out if you're a black American and you're voting for Trump, you ain't black. The former vice president of the United States just said that. And you're hearing it on the Rush Limbaugh show because we pulled the audio off a top 40 urban radio show, I believe in New York. Now think about that. That should be front page news. Think about who gets the headlines and who doesn't and what they're about. That should be front page news. Can you imagine if Donald Trump said that? Now, Donald Trump says things that are actually factual. It just frightens a lot of middle-aged white liberal men. Like he says to a black audience, what have the Democrats done for you? He says things like, I don't care if you're black, man, woman, Latino, Chinese. I don't care. You're American. All Americans should rise up. He says things like that, and people call him racist. But Joe Biden says, you need to figure out, because if you're black and you don't vote for me, oh, wait, it gets better. Here's a couple medical experts on marijuana. This is the host of the show along with Dr. Joe Biden.
We got to give people a chance.
You know, Vice President Biden, I've read some of your black agenda, and you say that you would decriminalize marijuana. What's the difference between legalizing it and decriminalizing it?
Because they're trying to find out whether or not there is any impact on the use of marijuana, not in leading you to other drugs, but what it affects. Does it affect long-term development of the brain? And we should wait till the studies are done. I think science matters.
I think we got decades and decades of studies from actual weed smokers, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I know a lot of weed smokers.
We got decades and decades of potheads saying that THC didn't affect me. It really didn't. THC is extremely damaging on developing brains from age 13 to 25. The research proves it. No one wants to talk about it because it's politically incorrect. I'm talking about THC. So I just found it fascinating that a guy who loves pot is asking a guy who hangs around with potheads, and they're talking about pot policy. But they're not doing it on News Sunday. They're not doing it on a news platform. And that's something else I want you to pay close attention to. Watch where and how the left showcases its candidates. Let's see. We'll do Ellen, and then we'll do The Tonight Show, and then you'll go on The Price is Right. Yes, that'll get the thinking voters all in line with you. 800-282-2882. Very quickly before I forget, under normal circumstances, a Memorial Day weekend like this one would have millions of us traveling away from home for a couple days at a time. It'll be that way again. Don't worry, because this is America, and your home should be properly protected when you're away. Rush has the solution for that.
There's a correlation between home break-ins and people being in their homes. That's common sense, but it illustrates a point. The number of home burglaries during this time are down. Some cities are reporting decreases 25 to 50% from the same time period last year. You know why? Because people are at home. Contrary to what you might think, burglars don't break in when they think people are there. They don't break in when you're asleep. That's just for TV shows. They try to break in when they think nobody's home. They don't like to run into people in their line of work. But it's not always going to be like this. You are going to resume going to work someday, and you're going to resume going out regularly again, and home burglaries, sadly, they will resume as well. Now, if your home is not protected with a home security system, you need to fix that right now, and you can do it without breaking your bank. It's the great thing about Simply Safe Home Security. Cutting to the chase, they've eliminated the wires. When you take the wires out, you take a lot of cost, a lot of complexity. You take a lot of the need for other people to be involved in your system. There's no site survey necessary. There's no construction project to run the wires. There's nothing because the sensors all connect to the central base station via Wi-Fi. And if a sensor goes bad, it's obvious, it's identified. You can trace it easily, replace it easily. It's why they call it Simply Safe. It has really simplified home security. It's just as secure, works just as well, but it's much more consumer friendly. You have an intimate awareness relationship with your system. It's not something you need somebody else to come out and deal with, fix, or what have you. You leave home and you set your alarm. It'll notify you and the cops of a break-in. There's professional monitoring, 24/7 monitoring, and it's only $14.99 a month, not $50. There's no contract to sign. That you'll be amazed how much it doesn't cost, folks. And it's every bit as effective as any security system. In addition to that, you can install it in a condo, in an apartment, a small business. You don't have to have a full-fledged multi-room house. You can put this anywhere. More than 3 million families have installed Simply Safe. The number is growing exponentially. See it online, simplysafeusa.com. They're going to throw in, if you buy a $100 HD camera El Fribo when you buy now. simplysafeusa.com.
Show your dad he raised you right. This Father's Day, give him a subscription to the Limbaugh Letter, America's #1 political newsletter, written by America's anchorman, Rush Limbaugh. Available at rushlimbaugh.com.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Don't forget, when you go to rushlimbaugh.com, there's a section where you can express your well wishes and your notes to Rush. It's called Special Notes to Rush. Just click on that tab at rushlimbaugh.com. So send him a note, and you can also put photos up there. There's a section on rushlimbaugh.com that's awesome. All these ditto heads from around the country. It's a great slice of Americana as we head into Memorial Day weekend. And hopefully your governor is not a dictator and you can freely assemble or speak openly or even worship the God that you'd like to, according to the Constitution. Probably not the case in a blue state, but I'm sorry, I didn't vote Democrat. 2 naval bases have been targeted in the last 6 months. Had to bring this up because again, just like when the Pensacola thing went down and we found out in the case of Pensacola, this was somebody from training on the base with permission. And they also, it escapes me now, I'm almost positive they were a Saudi citizen, but don't quote me on that. But they were a citizen here training with Americans. This is the 6 months ago in Pensacola at the Naval Air Base in Florida. You remember the Americans that were killed. I still don't know how this guy was able to buy a gun, but he was. So, again, I can't help but wonder if political correctness is still crippling our ability to effectively vet people from other countries where there's politically correct friction, if you know what I'm saying. You know how President Obama, and it started under Bush, actually, and President Obama took it to the next level, started to purge some of the manuals and training, what do they call those, modules. Started to purge the modules of certain terms. So you couldn't say Islamic terrorist. You could say white supremacist terrorist. You could say militia. You could say honky cracker terrorist. But you couldn't say Islamic terrorist. You couldn't say violent Muslim extremist. All that was scrubbed. And I think this is left over. And the vetting process, I think it's gone too far in the other direction. So someone says, oh, look, here's a guy from Saudi Arabia who wants to train with Americans on a military base, and he wants to live in our community in Florida, and he wants to carry a gun legally. Well, I don't want to be called politically incorrect or racist, so looks good to me. Now, that's a slight exaggeration, but how the hell did he get on the base? Okay, and then we just had another situation in Texas. We're getting more information on that. And and he also has ties to terrorist organizations. So my question is, why is it that when I was a substitute teacher for a couple years in Pennsylvania, I was vetted better than these killers were? I mean, they went back 30 years on me to be a substitute teacher. I'm not kidding. They went deep. Plus there was drug testing. And I've been a proponent of people in the United States Senate and the United States Congress. They should be drug tested on a regular basis. Well, why would you do that? Have you ever listened to Nancy Pelosi speak? They all should be drug tested on a regular basis. There should not be a vetting process that they escape. In fact, they should be vetted better than anyone because they're legislating laws. They're making laws. Just a thought. 800-282-2882. It is Open Line Friday, and I do have a hard break coming up, but you folks standing by, thanks for your patience. We're going to hit you right after the break. I just hate to start you off and everything gets all exciting, and then we have a hard break. But coming up, we're also going to discuss 3 of the key facts, and I think a lot of people will agree on this, why we should reopen now. I certainly hope that you're planning to have a meaningful Memorial Day. Hopefully you're going to do what you want to do. If you want to worship, if you want to have a cookout or a barbecue, it's amazing how ridiculous it is. And I don't know how many more times we could say this. You hear everyone say it. Did you ever think 10 years ago, and then they fill in the blank with whatever is happening now? You know, people getting fined for not wearing a mask, people getting arrested, they're taken out of their business in handcuffs because they open their business. And sometimes they don't even go out on the street. That, to me, is the most frustrating thing. I completely agree, and I have since the beginning. If you are going around being intentionally reckless, there should be a level of penalty. If you're being intentionally reckless. Like if you're the guy in the grocery store without a mask who's, okay, all over the flowers and the fruit. But if you're keeping your distance, and if you're treating people with respect and courtesy, and all you want to do is open your store, you don't even want to leave it. You just want to sit there on the sidewalk and say, hey, I'll be out on my sidewalk. Come on by. Tell me what you need. I'll run in and get it. And the fact that you cannot do that in states, it's an outrage. It truly is an outrage. But that doesn't mean I don't believe in taking precaution. And that has been the biggest misconception in that standard liberal fare. You take a tiny little bit of fact, and then you combine that 7% of fact with 93% of BS. And then you can make comments like, the president doesn't even care if people get hurt if you open up. And you know that's ridiculous. He does, and we've watched it. I urged people earlier in the week, compare the numbers of Florida and New York. Compare the numbers, the demographics, the nursing home dynamic, which, if you notice, never was an issue in New York. I'm sorry. In Florida. It was an issue in New York. It was an issue in Pennsylvania. It was an issue in Minnesota. It was an issue in Michigan. What do those states have in common? What do the blue states have in common? Besides poor leadership and a lack of competence. They went into the COVID with weak economies or debt or pensions that were breaking the backs of major cities in places like California or Wisconsin, Ohio. What do they have in common? And I know Ohio has a Republican governor, but he's a rhino. So, and rhinos don't count. They don't count as if you're a Republican governor and you're trashing Donald Trump every day, then you're a Democrat. That's the truth. Because if you look at President Donald Trump's track record, politically, policy, legislatively, not that he legislates, but you know what I mean. You'll see the direction it's going in. And heck, it's going more Republican and conservative than in the last 25 years. Another mistake that the news media made. Very quickly, I want you to hear, this is Meghan McCain. She was talking to Senator Tim Scott. And I thought it was a good question. It was a good question. First of all, I'm not going to play the beginning where Dr. Whoopi Goldberg, one of the great American thinkers of our time, Dr. Goldberg tried to trap Senator Scott and say, oh, I just read a survey that 36,000 people would still be alive if Trump acted 4.3 days earlier. What do you think about that? Should those deaths be on him? And, you know, Senator Scott Tim Scott from South Carolina was brilliant with his response. He said, look, I don't Monday morning quarterback at halftime. We're all Team America, and here's what we're going to do. And it's interesting because Chuck Schumer will say something like that. Chuck Schumer will say, we're all together, and then he'll just start ripping Trump. But rarely do you hear Republicans, when they get cornered on these shows, they come out, but they don't attack the Democrats. They don't attack Biden. They just go, look, I don't even want to go there. We're all one country now. We're all fighting this together. And then Megan asked this question.
Those assuming President Trump is doomed in 2020. Just last week, Democrats lost a seat in California for the first time in 22 years, and they lost to a Republican who embraced Trump in a district that Clinton carried handily in 2016. What is it about the president that you and many around the country see and that the media seems to continue to be missing?
I think the answer to the question is that most often the media is not talking to anyone in rural America, and they're certainly not talking to someone in South Carolina that's a Republican or most independents. Frankly, his support is without any question, at least where it was before in those states. I think in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, it's been a bit of a roller coaster, but the enthusiasm numbers are significantly higher for President Trump over Vice President Biden. There's 53% high enthusiasm for Trump and about 24% for high enthusiasm for Biden. When you take those numbers and you expect a pretty strong recovery as we head into the summer and into the fall, you will expect that this race will be very different than most of the prognosticators think today. But I said that in 2016 when the New York Times called me and asked me to explain the day before the election why Trump lost, and I said, I think you hadn't been to South Carolina, and you certainly hadn't been to Moncks Corner, South Carolina. It was pretty clear to me that most people were in a different position.
I think that, again, COVID has been the great exposure. It's really opened up people's eyes to things that conservatives, like myself, perhaps you, I know Rush has been exposing this for decades, but rarely does the entire country have an opportunity to see all at once how incompetent leftist progressive leadership is. You know, everybody's, and my heart goes out to people in Michigan with the floods. It's horrible. And what a spring they're having. You know, COVID, the economy, and now this flooding, which is horrific. It's 10 feet in some areas. And, but understand that there's no way, unfortunately, for the Democrats, there's no way you can connect this to Trump. He had nothing to do with the dams failing in 2 locations. He had nothing to do with COVID-19. It started in Wuhan, China, which the Democrats and a lot of people are still defending. They still favor China over Trump, which is bizarre. And then you had the economy in places like Illinois and Michigan, and you had cities that were crumbling, like Detroit, the crime in Chicago, Los Angeles falling apart, Seattle, Washington falling apart. A lot of this stuff happened before COVID. And I think for the first time, people hear Trump being attached to this, and they go, wait a minute. Now, you've been picking on this guy since 2015, and I'm not a big fan of his tweets, and I don't like his hair. But you're wrong on this one. I think this is what will be the straw that breaks the camel's back as far as, you know, look at Cuomo. Look at the things that come out of his mouth. Look at what these governors are saying about you. I mean, we've been called cowards. We've been called, oh, my God, in Chicago, they were calling you racist if you wanted to reopen your business. I actually heard someone say, well, if you cared about black people, you wouldn't open up your business because you're risking. What? Do you know how many small business owners are people of color in this country? This is the most successful environment for anyone. People of color, any gender, any religion. It's the most successful place on earth. Why wouldn't you want to let them thrive? So people are getting a good taste of what's going on. And it's hitting everybody. It's hitting everybody in the wallet. not to mention the tragedies in hospitals and nursing homes. This is the Rush Limbaugh Show. Let's go to Lynn in Pittsburgh, PA. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Ken. How are you?
I'm feeling good all under, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you. Can I give a quick shout-out to Rush and just tell him how much I love him? Mega dittos, mega prayers, and also to all of our veterans overseas and home. Thank you so much for what you do. And obviously, President Trump, love you, man. Keep going. Anyway, my call was about I go into rehabs with my business, and you can see that they are the weakest of all people with this COVID. I'm no longer allowed in because all of them are shut down now. But I find it funny that all the blue state governors, well, not all of them, but, our governor, along with the other ones that you mentioned, would send people into COVID-19 people into the rehabs and nursing homes. And if anybody wants to look up Saul Alinsky's doctrine, 8 steps to topple a nation and create a socialist state, the first one is healthcare. Control healthcare, you control the people. And as we know with socialism, they feel that the elderly are a drain of resources on the state. So I just find it funny. You could see which states love everybody, red states, try to keep them safe. And I just find it kind of, suspect that these blue states were sending COVID people into the weakest population. I don't know, call me crazy, but that's what I've seen. And on another note, and I don't know if the other blue state governors are doing this, but I have a very good friend who's a police officer, and I got a call saying that I guess you know that some of our bars are allowed to sell mixed drinks now, but you can't open them till you get home, whatever. But yes. Governor Wolf had just sent something out to the different police stations in boroughs that I guess, I don't know if it's just this weekend or from now on, but anybody that writes a ticket gets $25 towards their county, borough, whatever it is, their jurisdiction. So they were told, my friend's chief had told them to write as many tickets as possible because that's going to be bringing money into their area.
Wow, that's a great, thank you for calling, Lynn. That's a great place to leave it, and I can't help but compare this. If you're a student of Soviet history, the different areas would reward you if you were willing to penalize your neighbor. You'd get extra cheese, or you'll get extra rations, or you'll have a better job, but you're going to have to go after your neighbors and help us, the government, keep them in line. It's pretty scary, but it's happening across the country in some form. And if the news media did its job, you would not be the only person to know this. People listening to Rush or other talk radio or doing your own research. The whole country would know. But understand, if you only watch or listen to a certain thing, you're not getting this unconstitutional update and all these violations and the people hurting. All you're getting is it's Trump's fault. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
I'm starting to get a little excited about the Memorial Day weekend. I have a 3-day weekend, like many of us do. And, of course, Rush will be back Tuesday. My name's Ken Matthews. Thrilled that you're tuning in and enjoying your nice comments and emails and the awesome calls from the best audience in radio. It really means a lot to us. 3 facts that I want to throw out there very quickly about how millions of Americans, including the President of the United States, has come to the conclusion that we should open up. And I will say, this is just my opinion, don't let people panic or fear you into this next wave of pandemic. And I know that sounds crazy to say, but it's so easy when things are going well you could go on national news heading into a weekend and say, well, bad news, another wave's coming. What do you mean? Well, according to Al Gore, New York's going to be underwater by 2003. So this is the game. This is the game. You get kept off balance. There's panic. There's fear. Obviously, a big narrative on the left is hate. You get a lot of us hating each other. You want to get as many people hating each other as you can. Then you step in, and both sides are weaker. But this is so disgusting now that we're ramping up the next killer wave. And none of the numbers point to that. Well, what about the new cases? They're just doing more tests, that's all. And does anybody, when you see this on CNN or NBC, does anybody ever say, here's how they've rated the cases? 49% are mild, 30% are moderate, and the following are... No, of course not. Because numbers are designed to frighten you, especially unknown numbers. So here's the facts I want to point out. The total deaths being attributed to COVID-19 are not always accurate. And what that means is they're inaccurate. They're not always accurate. So where do we see this? We see it in blue states. We see it when the CDC changed its methodology. We see it when, I don't know about in your state, but I had coroners calling me on the radio station in my state and saying, I don't know where the governor's getting these records, but I work at the morgue, and this is not what we're seeing. So, number one, not always accurate. Number two, the deaths may be spiking. The death rate may be spiking because of the shutdown. How do we know this? Well, we have the proof now. Nursing homes and wrong decisions about isolation, containment, and the whole nursing home dynamic. You don't take people that have something that you claim to be the deadliest pandemic on earth and say, why don't you go hang out with people that are really vulnerable, elderly, have comorbidities, pre-existing conditions, upper respiratory issues, and Alzheimer's? Why don't we just send the COVID people there? And nobody would do that, right? Well, you'll have to talk to blue governors about that, blue state governors. So those are two biggies, right? The death count is not always accurate. The death spike could be from the shutdown. I happen to believe it is. All the data isn't out yet. And third, virus deaths are clustered. The majority of counties in the United States have 0 death. We'll take your calls and continue on Open Line Friday on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Coming up.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Open Line Friday.
Yeah, what he said. 800-282-2882. Big topic, obviously, today. CDC guideline changes, COVID-19 updates, and the socialist takeover of the greatest country on earth by blue state governors and leftist candidates. But other than that, it's anything goes. Illinois Governor Pritzker. I have to share this with you because I don't know if you've seen this. I'm going to quote him. He just said, he said he wants jail time for business owners who violate the stay-at-home orders. See, he mandated hefty fines, and then he said, and even if we have to put you behind bars, and that's not behind the bar that's closed where you have to social, this is prison. And am I the only one that gets a kick out of a guy with Chicago in his state threatening to put people that go back to work in jail? This is what's crazy about this whole thing. And then the CDC, Center for Disease Control, at the top of the show, I was sharing with you that, and I'm quoting them, new guidelines. COVID-19 virus does not spread easily from contaminated surfaces or animals. Well, thanks. Thanks for revising that. Thank you so much. Now that I've spent $842 on cleaning material and our houses have never been cleaner, I don't think I've ever seen grocery store shopping cart handles glisten. Like, have you noticed that? You know how grimy everything usually is? And this is no reflection on the people that have carts. I'm just saying that, but now it's like people are actually cleaning the cart probably more aggressively than they're cleaning their own bathrooms. The CDC made other key changes to its website, clarifying what sources are not major risk. Under the new heading, the virus does not spread easily in other ways, the agency explained that touching contaminated objects or surfaces does not appear to be a significant mode of transportation. What? So even if the surface is contaminated, that changes the whole dynamic for Joe Biden's campaign, which is built around him coming up behind women and smelling their hair and touching their neck and their shoulders. This is a whole new dynamic now. He doesn't have to wear gloves. Maybe he will get out on the campaign trail. Robert, Roseville, Michigan. You're on the Rush Limbaugh Show. Welcome.
First and foremost, I just want to give you a quick warning. Anybody who may have a COVID patient in their family and they have life insurance on them, make sure that the death certificate is accurate, because if it's linked to COVID-19, your life insurance may not pay out. If it's a secondary diagnosis, push to make sure that what actually killed them is what's listed.
Really? Now, where did you hear that, Robert? What's that all about?
I actually heard that about 3 weeks ago from a lawyer show here in Michigan, that a lot of people are not being paid off because the pandemic is an exception under a lot of life insurances.
Oh, that's right. They probably call it, what, a national disaster or catastrophe?
Act of God.
There you go.
The old act of God, you think.
Yeah, that's one time when leftists believe in God, when they don't want to pay out something.
Yes, the only time they believe in God, yes. In 2008, I started attending college here locally in the Detroit area, and I noticed that about 2009 they were adding all these hand sanitizers. What's this for? And the swine flu, H1N1, all that stuff. And so somewhere around that time, I decided to look it up. And CDC had research that indeed, once an airborne virus of any kind touches a flat surface, it becomes inert, functionally inert. So unless you're touching it and immediately sticking your hand in your mouth where it gets to the mucous membranes, you aren't even going to get an infection. And even then, you're not getting enough, because it's not getting in your lungs, you're not getting it in the respiratory tract. So, and that's with any, I was aware of tests done several years before that where they would seat several people at a table and they would put plexiglass between them except where they could play cards. And one of them would have a raging cold, and he would get cold virus all over the cards, tested the cards would get cold virus on, and they would play cards. Nobody ever caught a cold from the person with the cold because the atmospheres were separate for each player, even though they made sure that it got on their hands. And that test was redone well over a dozen times because nobody would believe that mother and grandmother were lying to you when you were a kid. Well, when you were a kid, you were constantly sticking your hands in your mouth.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's part of that. That's part of not only the herd immunity concept, but it's the building up your immune system. Look at what babies do. Babies crawl around the floor, and mom turns around for 1 second on the phone, and baby's licking mommy's shoe or the bottom of the vacuum cleaner, and the kids grow up healthy.
Yes.
So
it's you isolate your kid from ever getting dirty, and the kid is always sickly.
Yeah, because he doesn't have the system built up. Well, that's what several of the thank you for calling, Robert. I appreciate it. Several doctors have, and they were banned from social media. And I to me, that it was so terrifying to see these doctors. You've probably seen them. They're from a clinic out in the Sacramento area, if I'm not mistaken. Roughly, I could be wrong. Could be Bakersfield. I'm not that familiar. I've never been to California, so. But they had some very commonsensical approaches, and they talked about the fact that all these people that are isolating themselves from the real world atmosphere, and everything's being cleaned and sterilized 24/7. They're changing gloves, cleaning the doorknobs, wiping the pen down, the pencil, the copier. That when things get back to, quote, normal, every single thing living everywhere is going to find them because they're not going to have any antibodies to beat it. Now, this is what they said, but they're not the only people to say that. This is classic common sense thinking throughout the world. And if it is so wrong, why would you ban it? Why not just, for example, if you are a major news network, why not have those doctors on a panel with Fauci and some other doctors? Maybe have a town hall. Why don't you have doctors that can debate? Have a bunch of people that went to medical school, a bunch of people that studied viruses, virology from around the world, and have them hash it out. And here's my theory on why that doesn't happen. Because the more information you and I get, the less fear we will have. That's with anything, right? What happens in a dark house? You hear a crazy noise, and it's pitch black. The loud lights are out, it's pitch black. Versus the lights don't go out, and you hear a noise. There it is. It's that simple. And I just don't understand why there's this big blackout on anything that goes against what has now become. Now it's official. This is a Democrat narrative. Now it is official. And all you have to do is look at the pattern of blue states, look at the economy, look at the medical data, look at the fact that Florida is the most transparent in their data. And I learned this before the governor, who's, by the way, did you know Governor DeSantis is a member of the Freedom Caucus? I'm doing a little plug for the Freedom Caucus here because we need more people like the men and women in the Freedom Caucus. They are about freedom. And DeSantis has always been, in Florida, they've been the most transparent. He demanded it. Every bit of data and information and demographic information and severity of the COVID, you can access it in your county. I found this out from my brother who sent me a link because he heard me on a show in Pennsylvania one day talking about how hard it is to get any information from Pennsylvania. And I'm sure you're experiencing that from, Minnesota to California to Oregon to New York. And because they're blue states. You just have to look at the pattern. It's no longer some wild conspiracy theory. Just look at the evidence. Who is managing it the best? Red states. What major cities are complete debacles with homelessness, sanctuary city, illegal immigration, drugs, debt, economy, unfunded pensions. Oh, yeah, and COVID-19. They're all run by predominantly Democrats. So you can whine all you want if you're a Democrat, but those are the facts. Republicans and conservatives did not run Baltimore into the ground. Nothing against Baltimore, but somebody ran you into the ground. And it wasn't me. And it wasn't Donald Trump. So when you see it now, 3 months after Operation Scare the Living Hell Out of America so they'll vote our way, 3 months after that started, now you see the patterns. And Dr. Birx, I couldn't believe that 15 minutes after I shared that bit of information about inaccurate deaths and things of that nature. She just came out and said hospitalizations are drastically reduced over the last 30 days, and that's one thing you don't hear about. You hear people in the news saying, and I know locally we hear it all the time. I'm sure you do in your state. In the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania today, there were several hundred and 352 new cases. Okay, are you going to tell me the severity of the cases? Nope, not in Pennsylvania. Are you going to tell me who went to the hospital? Nope, not in Pennsylvania. Are you going to tell me who were in the nursing home? The cases, not the deaths, the cases. Nope. Because if we break it down, it gives you, the viewer, the listener, the voter, the taxpayer, the information you need to make intelligent decisions about your own life and your own future. If I keep that information away from you, then, like people that support Joe Biden, you're forced to rely on the experts, like Joy Behar, Don Lemon, Michael Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg, that medical panel. I'm Ken Matthews in for Rush. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Ken Matthews, it's Open Line Friday as we head into Memorial Day weekend, hoping that our governors give us permission to worship God, assemble with our families, and eat in public. Oh, gosh. Please, leader, please give us permission to travel freely among our own countrymen. Hopefully, we'll see. Depends if you're in a blue state. Very quickly, I'm looking at some of the Major League Baseball proposed coronavirus rules. You can't make it up. Again, thanks to COVID-19, most newscasts resemble Saturday Night Live weekend updates, which people stop watching, unless you're doing a Trump thing. Limiting players' movements. Members of the traveling baseball team may not leave the club's hotel and should not congregate in public. That's one. Controlling the infielders' movements. When the ball is out of play or between pitches, fielders are encouraged to retreat several steps away from the base runner. There's another one here, too. And you know the other stuff. You've probably heard this already. No fighting, no spitting. There's a whole bunch of things you cannot drink in the dugout. You're not allowed in the dugout. And when you're in the dugout, you have to socially distance. And because the stadiums are empty, because what better way to crush an economy heading into an election than to take sports out of it, right? So people that are not due to play or to be on field in that inning, they'll sit in the stands right above the dugout. So you only have essential players in the dugout, and they have to be social distancing. No, of course I'm serious. This is serious stuff. There are geniuses across this great nation, in the Democrat Party in particular, that have implemented this cluster, shutting down the stadium's amenities. So I have never been on a smelly bus ride with Major League Baseball, but I was on a few smelly bus rides coming home from games in high school. So now you're not going to be able to use saunas, steam rooms, showers, and a variety of other amenities at the stadium, which is what a lot of guys do. You want to shower and change and then head out of it. But now you're all going to be doing it at the hotel. And remember, when you're on the bus, you can't be sitting next to each other. There you go. It's become a joke. I know. It has. Some other good news, though. I don't know if you saw this. President Trump cut illegal immigration, the strain of illegal immigration on hospitals, by 94%. And then I saw, this was last week, I saw a press conference, maybe you saw it, and the president had the director of immigration, or I'm not sure of the title, it could have been Border Patrol or whatever. And for the first time in history, they turned around people and redirected them out of the country as quickly as they came in. I forget what the numbers were. I'm going to throw out a rough number. You'll have to check it yourself. It was like 1,000 people tried to get in this one sector. And for the first time in history, within hours, almost 900 were turned back, that's an incredible rate. And then, the other ones were questioning whatever. But I love the fact that President Trump is delivering on this promise to get a grip on illegal immigration, because that's something that the news media never covers unless they can say kids are drinking out of toilets and Donald Trump is killing people. Unless they can say that, they don't even cover it. But keep in mind, it's still a big issue. And something else no one will tell us is how many people here illegally, or what I like to call PHIs, people here illegally, how many of them have COVID-19? Just a thought. 800-282-2882. Cindy, Dearborn Heights, Michigan. Cindy, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hi. I wanted to say that people are equating viruses with bacteria. Viruses are much, much smaller than bacteria. So these ads on television for masks will state that they filter bacteria with no mention of viruses. So, this is a big scam right there. And then on another note, I'm in Michigan, and we on the news they just gave from Lansing, a paper's been published apparently that 96,000 deaths, COVID deaths, are due to the fact that the patient was put on hydroxychloroquine. And, of course, I'm in Michigan with Gretchen and Dana, and so, of course, this crappy paper would come out of our Lansing, Michigan. So
interesting. Well, thank you for calling, Cindy. They have to discredit hydroxychloroquine because it came out of Trump's mouth, even though the FDA has approved it for close to 40 years. The question I would have with that study, though, a legitimate question is, are the comorbidities listed, pre-existing conditions, and the overall health and age and gender of the individuals? That is a big component in death, is it not? It's like last week when they said the 100-year-old widow of John Glenn died due to COVID-19. I guess somebody missed the fact that she was a century old, and nobody mentioned any other conditions that they had. 800-282-2882 is the number. It's Open Line Friday, and I want to remind you, you can go to rushlimbaugh.com. It's really cool stuff on there, but more importantly, you can write a personal comment or note to Rush. All you have to do is click on Special Notes to Rush, and it's at rushlimbaugh.com. And while you're there, check out the Limbaugh letter and check out how you can subscribe to Rush Limbaugh 24/7 and get all the good stuff. Open Line Friday continues next. I want to give a shout out to the folks at the National Navy SEAL Museum in Fort Pierce, Florida. And the reason I'm mentioning that, it's a really cool place. I don't know what the current hours are. The last time I was there, I took my sons there in May of 2014. And the reason I know this is because the photos just popped up on my Facebook page. You know how they bring back the memories, and the memories just touch my heart because now both my kids are as tall as me. They're definitely taller than Mom. They're 16 and 19 years old, or soon to be 16 and 19. But I took them there, and then in 1990, for my wedding, the day before the wedding, I took the guys in the wedding party to the National Navy SEAL Museum. I know it's geeky, but let me tell you, it's one of the coolest military museums. There's so much hands-on stuff. And so if you're ever in the Fort Pierce, Florida area, which is about 90 minutes north of, maybe you're visiting Rush Limbaugh. Maybe you're hanging out with Rush, and you say, you know what, I'm gonna go sightseeing. Well, 90 minutes up the road in Fort Pierce it's on the beach there on the other side of the jetty, is this incredible Navy SEAL museum, and they have all these pieces of history that you saw on the news. Like they have, Captain Phillips. They have Captain Phillips, that little capsule, the rescue capsule he was in when the SEALs, if you saw the movie or you read the book, the SEALs shot him. It was an incredible shot. They shot the terrorist in the thing and rescued Captain Phillips. Well, that actually is sitting there. You can see it. And a lot of other cool things, too. So I just wanted to give them there's so many wonderful people, both volunteers and working, around the country to showcase our great military history, not just the SEALs and the Navy, but Army and all over. And I never miss an opportunity to get to one of those or take my kids to one of those. And Memorial Day weekend, I thought it was good to give a little plug. But if you're in that area, check the website, see if they're open. 800-282-2882 is the number. It's open line Friday. Speaking of Florida, we're going to Sarasota, Florida now. Here's Woody. Woody, you're on the Rush Limbaugh Show.
Hey, yeah, our great governor today just okayed youth activities for the youth so they can play soccer or baseball, but I guess it's too dangerous for those Major League baseball players to play, huh?
Isn't that funny? I mean, it's amazing. I guess the kids are going to be excited.
Yeah, they'll get to play, but those millionaires, they'll sit home.
That's crazy. I don't know. Do you think Major League Sports will ever come back?
Sometime when they get broke. They spend a lot of money.
Now in Sarasota, you're near a base, right?
No.
You're not? I thought you were. Oh, that's Pensacola. My mistake.
Yeah, there's McField up in Tampa.
Got it. Well, I appreciate you checking in, Woody, and I hope you have a meaningful Memorial Day weekend. Stephen in Edgewater, Maryland. How are things in that blue state?
Well, let me get straight to the point, like you said. My question is, what do you think about this? I think we have a fourth branch of the government emerging called the Health and Science Branch. And they're the branch that's not elected, and they've decided that we would hide like cockroaches in a refrigerator until they say it's safe to come out. They've not been elected. There's not been a vote cast. There's not been a bill passed. There's not been an election, not a shot fired, and we're all like hiding everywhere because these people say that, we're in danger, and then they're already calling for another wave to come. I think we have a fourth branch of the government that we can't really. I don't know how to fight against that. What do you think about that, Ken?
I think you're right on point. And when experts and bureaucrats, if you can create this air of credibility and legitimacy around them, they will supersede the Constitution. It's interesting that you mentioned that because all these governments that we reference, socialism, communism, whatever, and we reference South America and Cuba. These are all governments that just certain countries in South America, obviously not all of it, but these are governments that collapsed. But they all had these panels and commissions and these, as you said, unelected officials, and it is shocking that a doctor or a researcher can come in and pull rank on people that we elected. And something that jumped out at me that you said, but I've said it before, my dad and I were discussing this last week. I said, isn't it amazing how much control the left was able to get without firing a shot, just like Stephen just said? Many people thought, that's never going to happen. You'd have to roll in here with armored vehicles to shut down the economy. No, you don't. You just have to say, ooh, you'll catch it. You can't go to work. And then a week later, they'll say, wear a mask. And then 2 months later, they say, you really shouldn't wear a mask. And at the very beginning, they say, don't touch the counter. And then they say, well, you can't catch it from a counter. You're wondering when people are going to wake up. It's crazy. But again, not to belabor the point of history repeating itself, but history repeats itself if you let it. And most people don't want to do the heavy lifting to prevent it, especially if you're getting goodies. So if someone says, okay, we'll give you an extra $600 to stay home the rest of the summer. Now your boss calls, and this is happening all over the country, and the Democrats aren't talking about it. Your boss calls and said, great news! We just got permission from our great leader in whatever blue state, fill in the blank, and we can have you come back to work. What do you say? Well, not you if you're listening to Rush, but what does the person say that starts believing this is awesome? I like staying home eating Fritos, playing Call of Duty. This rocks. And I get an extra $600 because it's from the government. You see, they believe it's from the government, some of them. But we know where the money's from. I've never seen such a Ponzi scheme in my life. You thought Social Security was a Ponzi scheme? This is an incredible Ponzi scheme. We're going to take your and my great-great-great-great-great-grandkids' future and everything in between to buy votes in the next 5 months. There's not a bank on earth that would let you do that. But Congress will. So it is amazing how we got to that point. The decisions, and this is why, for the people who don't understand the shutdown movement, the reason I think people don't understand it is if you've given too much credibility and too much importance to, quote, experts. So if you believe an expert can outrank the Constitution, then you are going to be anti-shutdown. I think it's just the opposite. Because throughout history, experts have been full of you-know-what. I believe Rush would use the term excrement. That's what experts. Now, you could also argue, well, throughout history, elected officials have also been full of excrement. Well, yes, but they're duly elected and they're constitutionally elected. When you bring in Bill Nye the Science Guy, and you believe he's a scientist because he put the name Science Guy in his title, and then he goes on a science channel. Well, not only is that bizarre, but that shows you how gullible we are. Well, Bill Nye the Science Guy says that the CO2 from my dog is making it really hot in the desert right now. And we believe it. We believe it. Just like you believe Al Gore. There's a whole bunch of people that think Al Gore has some special knowledge or something about global warming. No, he doesn't. It's just an agenda. That's all it is. Do your own research on all this. And I just want to show you how, or I just want to call your attention to how the COVID-19 expert citizen dynamic pretty much mirrors the climate change expert citizen dynamic. Anybody who disagrees with man-made global warming is banned, censored, ridiculed. They're called deniers of some kind. And anybody who disagrees with we need to shut down the entire planet because China released the virus, well, you're banned. And if you're a doctor or a scientist on the side that pushes against the mainstream narrative, which is embraced lazily by the media, then you're targeted or ridiculed. And before I forget, Rush has another great message for you about Hillsdale College.
You know, there's no college or university more interested in sharing their teaching, sharing the learning experience with you than Hillsdale College. Somebody someday is going to chronicle the millions of Americans who've been further educated by Hillsdale's free online video-on-demand courses. They teach courses online. They make them available online, the same courses they teach to paying students on campus. I want everybody to learn what they teach. That's how strongly they believe in it. There are 25 online video-on-demand courses right now currently available for you to view free. And do you have time to watch them? You do. And every course is led by one or more professors at Hillsdale. They use the same curriculum materials being used in the lecture halls and the classrooms. The production quality, higher and more advanced than you would think. It's not just cheap little camera video. It's well thought out, well produced. Hillsdale puts this kind of effort and investment into this because they believe in teaching. They believe in learning. They love it. I mean, just the study alone on the values found in the Constitution is a classic example of a great course, Constitution 101. You think you know it? You don't have any idea until you see this course. And they run about 40 minutes. As I say, online, on demand. Watch when you have time. Sign up with no strings attached, free at rushforhillsdale.com. That's rushforhillsdale.com.
You're listening to the EIB Network.
Hello, xin chào tất cả mọi người. Hôm nay mình xin review về cây gì nhỉ? Cái sóng thần. Sóng thần. Cái sóng thần khá là được, thấy không? Khá là ok. Đấy, lá thì lá này thì lá kim. Sung sung. Ê tụi mày ơi, thằng nào lên nói chuyện tao vui nào? Từ kỹ mình vậy. Đấy rồi, còn từ kỹ mình nãy giờ, thật sự luôn. Không biết nói này có ai nghe không nữa. Đây, kệ đây. Ok nhờ. Khá là ok. Sau mình đây thì có mấy cái cây sau mình đây thì có mấy cái cây gì ta? Cây mai khá là ok nhỉ? Không? Được không? Được phải lồi kìa. Gì đây? Mưa mẻ rồi. Sắp mưa rồi. Trời đang mưa. Trời đang trở mẻ mưa rồi. Thấy không? Ok. Rồi. Ê, hôm nay nói chuyện ta vui nào? Đi đâu vậy? Cái gì? Cái gì? Giấy luồn gì? Làm trên trường rồi đấy làm trọ nữa. Làm trên trường rồi đấy làm trọ nữa, khổ mày thật.
Đây là trường này.
Hả?
Đây trường.
Tưởng làm trọ chứ. Rối gì nộp trẻo không? Dán hình chưa?
Hả?
Dán hình chưa?
Dán rồi, em làm rồi, bây giờ làm cho ông kia.
Nào, để tự nạp trên nạp đế gì nó. Đồ này đẹp trai vậy. Sau đây là gì ta? Cái gì mình mẹo tên nhỉ? Kia là cái măng cục. Lá dài dài đấy không? Cái măng cục. Được nhỉ? Được không? Quả này được phải lồn. Măng cục mà cái này là nó có củ. Có củ để phải có quả. Nó có củ nha, đừng có củ nhớ đấy, có củ để phải có quả. Củ to vãi lồn. Cũng có lồn vậy. Vô. Keo kìa. Keo sao không? Đó, cái keo. Cây keo nha. Keo khá là được. Ôi mẹ. Nhận mệt thật sự luôn chứ. Vãi lồn thật. Bỏ tay quá. Nãy sẽ review hết rồi nhỉ? Hết gì ta? Hết cái giải trọ luôn. Đấy. Đợi đi, cái trọ luôn coi. Đây dưới này là có mấy cây hoa. Thấy không? Mấy cái hoa này. Đó. Được nhỉ? Được không? Được phải của lồn rồi. Gì nữa nhỉ? Còn cái gì không ta? Đây chẳng còn cái gì nhỉ? Cái trứng cá. Được này, cái trứng cá này rồi. Cái trứng cá khá là ok không? Cái trứng cá này khá là ok. Ok vải của lồn rồi. Nào. Đấy. Bác này cho anh dễ nói chuyện. Địch phải nói trong to xíu. Còn mình vào nó to hơn ha. Cái này mới vừa chôn xong. Khá là ok. Trên kia là chủ trọ. Chủ trọ vui tính. Một bà, một cô, một chị, một thím. Hai em chồng. Cái kia đúng chất luôn. Chất phải lộn nữa. Gì đó. Bên trên kia. Cái này cao tầm 3 mét. 2 mấy. 2 mét. Trứng cá cao tầm 2 mét. Rất là cao. Cao vải của nồi luôn. Được nhỉ? Được không? Mát được luôn. Được xịn sò liền. Ấu xịn sò luôn. Được ló. Lo quá được. Ok baby liền. Cái này một vườn cây thiên nhiên. Một vườn cây thiên nhiên. Được nha. Quá được luôn. Trời ơi. Thôi, video mình xin kết thúc ở đây. Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video của mình. Nếu thấy hay thì đã subscribe và nút like. Ok, bye tất cả mọi người.